The content you're about to see contains bloody descriptions and fictional death for the sole purpose of entertaining. If you're a sensitive viewer, you might have nightmares. Today, let's explore the horrible and disturbing ways in which the supers from the Incredibles died at the hands of the Omnidroids of Project Kronos, plus some extra death mentions. So, let's get started. Universal Man was the first on the list. He was stabbed multiple times by the claws of the first Omnidroid, also known as the BX-1. This model already had considerable speed, propelled by two wheels, and was equipped with articulated gripping claws, which allowed to tear Universal Man to pieces, while he desperately tried to escape, as can be heard in this audio log. If we pay close attention, we can hear he suddenly pierced right in the throat, causing blood to immediately gush out, likely cutting his jugular. This super also had a somewhat desperate death, as it was considerably slow. Universal Man possessed the power of atomic density manipulation. Cywave, also the second victim at the hands of the first Omnidroid, was trapped somewhere on the island. It turns out that Cywave was not capable of using Earth telekinesis to prevent the Omnidroid's approach, which led to a cruel fate, as her powers were purely psychic. It is probable, although she certainly suffered a lot, her death was somewhat quick, possibly losing her head to the Omnidroid's articulated claws, or being torn in half without any compassion. Everseer was the last super to be destroyed by the first Omnidroid. Unfortunately, he was found trying to hide from the Omnidroid, entering a state of terrible panic and desperation upon being captured. Then, in a very fast and ruthless movement, he was pierced right through the head, silencing him forever. His main powers were telepathy, clairvoyance, and magnivision, so that means he was practically vulnerable to physical attacks, without any chance of defending himself. The next one raises the level of pain and suffering experience. This is Macroburst. This super, in a formidable manner, will use its high-density force projection power to incapacitate the BX-1. Unfortunately, the BX-2 had bipedal locomotion improvements, becoming even faster, in addition to being equipped with two sharp gripping limbs. Once captured, his legs were turned off in a single swipe. His screams would be terrible, although he would fall into abrupt silence as the Omnidroid crushed the remaining part of his body, thus ending his life forever. This super, known as Phalanx, was eliminated in a somewhat cruel manner, as he was pierced multiple times by the sharp claws of the Omnidroid, only to finally be pierced through the head. Despite his sonic shield projection, it seems it was enough to stop the improved strength and speed of this version of the Omnidroid. In his audio, you can hear his body first hitting the ground, and then his head probably falling onto his remains. One of the supers who probably suffered the most was Blazestone. Despite her ability for pyrotechnic discharge and fire control, it would be useless, as she ended up being torn apart in half by the BX-2, but not before being slammed against trees, rocks, and the ground of the island. It turns out that this super was grabbed by both ends of her body and then stretched, causing a quite bloody scene, where her organs and guts were even scattered across the ground. Definitely one of the most terrible ways she could have ended. Her audio log is full of desperation before she is finally found and grabbed by the Omnidroid. After an unknown super eliminated the terrifying BX-2, Downburst appears. After attempting an exhausting and overwhelming escape, he was captured, and that is when the worst happens, and it is believed he was torn in half by the improved claws of the BX-3, which had a motorized mechanism similar to a circular saw. All this while the poor super was being held by the legs, leaving him hanging upside down. cutting him in a quite inhuman way, starting from the bottom up. This new Omnidroid had improved speed, driven by triple locomotion. Downburst flight powers were diminished, and its powers of gaseous expulsion was of little use. Hypershock will be the super who, thanks to its generation of seismic waves, will defeat the BX3, probably making it fall from high place. Unfortunately, this super will be crushed by the BX4, which had notorious improvements, and at least he put up a fight against these last ones. Some believe that Hypershock was grabbed by one of the Omnidroid's 4 claws to be later severed in half. However, the most likely scenario is that he simply suffered a crushing that burst all his vital organs and broke his bones, leaving him agonizing and waiting for his eventual death. Apogee was a super who had a tragic end. It turns out that she had her head removed when she was found by the BX4 while trying to hide. Her audio log captures her desperation, in addition to the sudden silence once the Omnidroid finds her, which indicates that the decapitation happened quite quickly, sparing her from prolonged pain. It is worth remembering that this super's power was levitation and gravity control. After 7 mortal victims, the BX4 will be destroyed by Gazerbeam, the super with laser vision. Unfortunately, he will be stabbed on the right side of his stomach by the B5 Omnidroid, causing a severe hemorrhage from his stomach, which led to his eventual death, but not before escaping and managing to write the name of Project Kronos, using his laser vision with the last strength he had left. The suffering of this super lies in imagining his desperation upon knowing he was going to die, bleed out, and the last thing he could do with the little strength he had left was leave his final message. Stormicide will be the next on the list. Despite having electrical powers and wind burst, it will be of a little use, as she ended up surrendering to the B5, resigning herself to her fate. Therefore, after slamming her against the ground several times, this Omnidroid proceeded to simply crush her skull, causing her brain and face to be completely disfigured. This Omnidroid will be destroyed by Gamma Jack himself. Gamma Jack was the last super to be defeated. He fell at the hands of the B6 Omnidroid. According to the audio logs, it happened when in the middle of a battle against the B6, he was suddenly pierced from behind, embedding the claw up to his throat, to be later dismembered while he was still alive, causing one of the most painful deaths, one of that will mark the end of the deaths of the supers on the Project Kronos list. Some supers were also eliminated in a somewhat strange and situational ways. These are shown for brief seconds and were mainly caused by the use of caves. Stratogale certainly had one of the most grotesque endings if you think about it. Since she was sucked into an airplane turbine, she was shredded, causing her body to end up in hundreds of pieces of flesh falling from the sky. This happened when she was just trying to greet the airplane passengers. Thunderhead was practically pulverized as his cape got caught in the fan of a missile, which could have exploded right upon impacting a surface or a target. Although his death was quick, it is certainly cruel. Splashdown was a super who suffered a lot, especially due to the extreme desperation he felt when being sucked into a water spout, which brought him straight to the bottom of water, making it impossible for him to breathe until he ended up drowning. What you heard in this video was the result of a small investigation I did. Also was based heavily on those audio logs circulating on the internet about the deaths of the supers. By the way, the links I got information and videos are below in the description. Although many of these descriptions are somewhat fanciful and improbable to happen to any human being, it is worth remembering that reality always surpasses fiction, and some real cases have truly shown us this.